What if the person who broke your heart 7 years ago is now signing your monthly salary? What if the man who left without saying goodbye is now the man who says good morning to you every single day in a glass-walled office? What if you walked into a job interview, sat across from a stranger, shook his hand professionally, and realized in 0.3 seconds that this stranger had once been your husband? What would you do? Would you scream? Would you cry? Would you run? Or, and this is the part that will change how you think about strength forever, would you smile, open your notebook, and say, "Nice to meet you, sir. This is not a fantasy. This is not a movie. This is Sarah's real, shocking, heartbreaking, and ultimately beautiful story. And if you stay until the very end, I promise you, you will learn English. You will learn about love. And most importantly, you will learn something about yourself that you did not know before. Stay with me. This story is just beginning. Sarah Malik arrived at her new office on a Monday morning in April. She was 32 years old. She was wearing a navy blue blazer, carrying a leather notebook, and feeling the particular kind of nervous excitement that comes with starting something completely new. She had moved to this city 3 months earlier. New city, new apartment, new name, new beginning. She had worked hard for this position, marketing manager at a growing technology company. The interview had gone beautifully. She had spoken with the HR department, completed 3 rounds of selection, and received her offer letter from someone named R. Khan, CEO. She had not thought much about the name. She should have thought more about the name. The office building was modern, all glass and clean lines, and the smell of fresh coffee. A young receptionist named Zara greeted her with a warm smile and walked her to the marketing department, showing her the 3rd desk from the window. Sarah placed her bag down, looked around at her new colleagues, and felt something open inside her chest, the feeling of hope returning after a very long winter. And then the CEO walked in for the Monday morning team meeting. Sarah's coffee cup stopped halfway between the desk and her lips. Her brain processed the information in stages, the way a computer loads a large file. First the height, same. Then the walk, same. That particular confident walk she had memorized over 4 years. Then the jaw, the hands, the way he held his folder under his left arm. Then the eyes, when he glanced briefly across the room before looking down at his documents. Same dark brown eyes, same slight crinkle at the corner when he was concentrating. Rayhan Khan, her ex-husband, the man who had disappeared from her life 7 years ago with nothing but a note that said, "I'm sorry, I cannot explain. Please do not look for me." Sarah's coffee cup completed its journey to her lips. She drank, she breathed, she opened her leather notebook. She wrote the date at the top of the first page in perfectly neat handwriting. She told herself one thing: he does not recognize me, and I will not tell him. The first week was the hardest. Sarah discovered quickly that Rayhan, Mr. Khan, she reminded herself constantly, Mr. Khan, was not a distant office tower CEO. He was present. He walked through the departments. He attended team meetings personally. He asked questions, listened carefully, and remembered small details about his employees. He was, professionally speaking, exactly the kind of leader Sarah would have admired enormously if she had never known him personally. This was, she decided, the universe's specific sense of humor. He did not recognize her. This was both the relief and the wound. 7 years, shorter hair, glasses, a different name, a different version of herself entirely. She had become invisible to the eyes that had once claimed to know her better than anyone. She told herself this was good. She told herself this was what she needed. Professional distance, a clean beginning, no complications. She delivered her first marketing presentation at the end of week 1. It was, by any objective standard, excellent. She had worked on it for 3 evenings straight, running on green tea and determination. When she finished, there was a moment of silence in the conference room, and then Mr. Khan nodded slowly and said, "This is exactly the direction we needed. Well done, Ms. Malik." Ms. Malik, her mother's name, the name of her new self. Sarah thanked him professionally and returned to her seat. That night, in her small apartment, she sat on the kitchen floor for approximately 20 minutes and cried very quietly into a dish towel. Then she stood up, washed her face, made herself dinner, and planned the next week's work strategy. This was how survival looked from the inside. Weeks passed. October arrived, painting the city in amber and gold outside the office windows. Sarah had become, in the quiet, undeniable way that genuine talent always reveals itself, one of the most valuable members of the team. Mr. Khan began consulting her regularly. Their professional relationship was crisp, respectful, and, on her end at least, carefully managed. She was always prepared. She always answered clearly. She always maintained exactly the right amount of professional distance. But she noticed things. She noticed them the way you notice details about a landscape you once loved and thought you would never see again. He still tapped his pen 3 times before a big decision. He still pushed his chair back slightly when he was about to disagree with something, but was choosing his words carefully. He still took his coffee at 8:47 a.m., black, no sugar. He was still afraid of pigeons. She noticed this on a morning when one landed on the window ledge beside his office, and he moved very deliberately to the other side of the room before anyone could register why. Sarah registered why. Sarah registered everything. November came cold and quiet. The office had grown familiar around her, the rhythms of it, the sounds, the way the heating clicked on at 7 a.m., and the way the last light stayed on in Mr. Khan's office most evenings. Sarah sometimes stayed late too, working on campaigns, and occasionally she would see his office light still burning as she packed her bag, and she would feel something complicated and wordless move through her chest before she put on her coat and walked to the elevator. On a Tuesday in the second week of November, she knocked over her coffee mug, the mug with small blue flowers on it. She had carried it from her old apartment, the only object she had kept from that previous life, because it had belonged to a rainy afternoon and a small shop and the woman she used to be, standing in an aisle of ceramic cups, thinking about what would make his mother smile on her birthday. The mug shattered. Sarah was on her knees collecting the pieces when she heard footsteps and looked up to find Mr. Khan standing in the entrance to her section, returned early and unexpectedly from an afternoon meeting. He was looking at the broken pieces on the floor with an expression she could not immediately read, and then he said it, quietly, casually, the way people mention something they have not thought about in years. My mother had a mug exactly like that one. Blue flowers. Someone very special chose it for her. Funny thing to remember, he was not speaking to Sarah. He was speaking to the air, to the memory, to some private corner of himself. Sarah's hands stopped moving. Her eyes stayed on the broken pieces of blue and white ceramic on the gray office floor. She did not speak. She did not stand up immediately. She held 2 pieces of the broken mug in her hands and breathed very carefully, and felt 7 years of a very organized, very controlled silence develop one small, invisible crack, like the crack in the ceramic itself, clean and irreversible. She heard him walk away toward his office. She stayed on the floor for another few seconds. Then she stood up. She placed the broken pieces in the waste bin. She returned to her computer. She opened the campaign document she had been working on. Her hands were perfectly steady, but something had changed in the atmosphere of her decision. Something had shifted slightly, the way tectonic plates shift beneath a surface that looks entirely still. She had not decided yet what to do with the crack, but she was no longer entirely certain that silence was the whole answer. Sarah began, very slowly, to examine what she actually wanted. Not what survival required. She had mastered survival. But what she, Sarah Malik, who had once been Sarah Ahmed, who had once sewn yellow curtains and laughed too loudly at bad jokes, and chosen blue-flowered mugs in rainy afternoon shops, what she actually wanted from the future that was still ahead of her. She discovered something surprising in this examination. She was not angry anymore. Somewhere in the 7 years of rebuilding herself, the anger had finished burning and left behind something quieter. Not forgiveness exactly, but a kind of understanding that she was more than the story of what had happened to her. She was also the story of what she had built afterward. She was her work, her courage, her quiet strength, her leather notebook, her new name, her new city, her mornings. And perhaps, she began to think on certain evenings while the office light burned late, the story was not entirely finished being written. She did not yet know what the next chapter would say, but for the first time in 7 years, she was not afraid to turn the page. This story is, at its heart, a story about one of the most underestimated forms of human strength, the strength of a woman who chooses, deliberately and daily, to build her future with steady hands, even when her past is sitting in the office down the hall. Sarah's journey teaches us that survival is not the end of the story. It is only the middle chapter. The real story begins when a person moves from surviving to living, from hiding to choosing, from silence to readiness. Her silence was never weakness. It was the quiet accumulation of her own power, the patient, disciplined work of a woman who knew that when the moment of truth arrived, she would meet it as her best self, not as the broken version of herself that had once knelt on a kitchen floor. For English learners, this story is a classroom wrapped in a love story, full of real vocabulary, real emotion, real grammar, and real human truth. Every word Sarah spoke, every professional sentence, every carefully chosen silence, these are the building blocks of real English communication. Language is not just letters and rules. Language is how we survive, how we love, how we rebuild, and ultimately, how we step forward into whatever beautifully uncertain thing comes next.